Welcome back to Preservation Travels with Lane and Kevin here at our Restoration Nation. Today, we're at beautiful Glenfield. Glenfield was built in two distinct architectural periods on a British land grant originally deeded to Henry Lafleur by King George III in 1774. The original 500 acres grew to a 2,000-acre working cotton plantation through various ownerships from 1774 to 1812 and from 1845 to 1850. Though Natchez, Mississippi surrendered early to Union troops during the Civil War, a skirmish was held here on the grounds of Glenfield, then called Glen Cannon. A bullet hole in the front door and other preserved artifacts tell the tale. Union soldiers had pickets and an encampment on the grounds of Glen Cannon, as written in the diary of Lucy A. Cannon, the Cannon's 15-year-old daughter. The house has been a historic house museum with tours for the public since 1932.
Hello, welcome to Glenfield. I'm Marjorie Ming. I'm so happy all of you are here taking pictures of the home and hearing the history about Glenfield. My great-grandfather bought it in 1880 from the Cannons, and when the Cannons lived here, they called it Glen Cannon. And when my great-grandfather bought it, he called it Glenfield after his own name. The house had 1,000 acres, and it was a cotton plantation. This is a planter's house, so it's a simple home, and we have always enjoyed it. We're down to about 180 acres now, and welcome to Glenfield, and let me bring you in the house. Glenfield has twin halls, and this was built in 1850. That part is 1845, which we will be going shortly. The hall was called the fainting room. I couldn't understand that. Well, people had tight corsets in those days, the ladies, and when they ate, they felt fainty. So they used this hall for a fainting room and probably had a sofa over here because both doors can open and you get the cool air, and that would help them a lot. The Cannons built this room in here as a family sitting room because the large drawing room is entirely too big for 2 or 3 people. This was a sitting room. We've always used it for a bedroom, though. The paint on the woodwork is the original paint. The cornices in here are all hand-carved teak wood, and I always thought they were bells of Ireland, but this lady that knew more about it than I did said, no, they were thistles. And so they were the sticky-type plants that would be out in maybe the pastures with a little flower. I was delighted to hear that because Mr. Cannon was Scottish, and I think he just remembered all of what went on in the Revolution. The furniture in the room is my grandmother's collection. That's a little tulip bed. The bedspread is handmade by the ladies. A lot of them did this in their time. The quilt is handmade, and it was made by the slaves, and it's beautifully made. When the Cannons lived here in 1862, the Union soldiers came to Natchez, and quite a few took the front yard because it had a big lake. And they stayed there, and they were constantly in the yard taking anything they wanted to, and there was not much you could do about it. They also had a skirmish on the front grounds, and we have a bullet hole in the door. In 1865, they tried to get into the house, and Mr. Cannon woke his family up, and they all had guns. And so later on, they were shooting all around the house. A cavalry came in, and I think it was Farrell and Adams, and they had a big skirmish right on the front grounds. Several years ago, the people from the Geographical magazine came, and they were the diggers, and they dug around and found all kinds of artifacts. We found coins. We found Bite the Bullet, little bullet he was telling me about. Then he found the mini balls. So we were right interested in whatever he could find, but we were looking. Finally, he found something that was gold, and it really was a bridge, but I just knew he'd found a pot of gold. The hat rack is Mr. Cannon's. We are lucky to have a few original pieces, and there's the swans again. He loved the swans because it reminded him of Scotland, where he came from. Mr. William Cannon built this room, and it was called the master bedroom, and it has his coat of arms, cornices in here. The bedspread was made by my grandmother. All the ladies made them, as I was telling you on the other one. After the Civil War, Mr. Cannon must have been very depressed. His children, his two daughters, went on up to Maryland, and he killed himself. And so the house stayed idle for about 8 years, and then my great-grandfather was able to buy it in 1880 when they realized they weren't coming back to Mississippi. Luckily, we found a journal that was up in the museum in Maryland, and we have a little screen that has all her beautiful drawings, and she taught art up in Maryland, and that lady lived to be 90 years old, and not many people in those days lived to be that age. We are very fortunate to have it, and we found it, and it's been in the museum for about 100 years. Well, this is some of her drawing, and we were so thrilled. It gives me a picture of how the place was. They have the cotton showing up here. They have the cottages on the ground. There's the kitchen. I wish the kitchen was still here. Her little sister and the Union soldiers had stolen her pony, and she was just so heartbroken, and it tells all about this in her diary. And the rest of the drawings is some of the pecan grove they had on the place. Remember, there was no roads out here, and there's some more of the property that would have been just a little path going to the river, and her little brother, and he died of TB. When my great-grandfather bought the house, his home was Shadyside, and anyway, he loved being out here, and he also bought the Majorca place from the Cannons. And this is his picture, and he had the brick factory in Natchez. His name was Osborne King Veal, and he was from Kentucky. This is the drawing room or the parlor, whatever you want to call it, and it has the original paint on the woodwork. All the furniture in here was my grandmother and mother's collection. I wish it would talk and tell me where it came from. A lot of it did come from Louisiana. The piano is Mr. Cannon's. They left it here when my great-grandfather bought the house. We have also some writing on a window pane that little Lucy put when she was 15, and she's the daughter that was doing all the drawing around here. The cornices in here also Mr. Cannon's coat of arms. And of course, you know, these are game tables. They were very popular in Natchez. And the literograph pictures, one is spring and one is fall. That was a very popular. the house did not have a front porch like it has now. That was my grandmother's doing. She wanted a porch to sit on when she was a young bride, so evidently some of the porch was deteriorating. It had 2 entrances. That's why we have twin halls. The date of all this is 1845. This was your first entrance, and then they added the other entrance later, in about, I would say, 1850. The desk you're looking at was Mr. Cannon's, and my great-grandfather used it, and my grandfather used it. The house is just opened up so it can be very cool. It's more like for summer. The walls are solid brick. We're going to go into the dining room now. Well, when we were reading the journal, and I was telling you about the skirmish they had on the grounds and how this room got so shot up, the little girl was writing in her diary how this room was so shot up, and I couldn't understand. Now, why would they shoot up a dining room? Then you kept reading, and finally it was not a dining room at all. It was used for a bedroom. And for some reason, they shot this room up so bad, there was no one in here. She said it took us weeks and weeks to clean it up. The cornices in here are also hand-carved teak wood, and I never did understand what they were. And when this lady from Scotland, she got her phone out, and she said, "Oh, those are swans." Now, I noticed what they are. I never liked them because I didn't know what they were. This is a plate warmer. I think all the homes had plate warmers, and the safe would have been out on porches where they had the goodies in it. It would have had a screen and not that. Everything in here is my family's collection. The windows are interesting in here, also out looking on the porches. They go up like a door, but they go right on up into the walls. And this is a very cool room, so I can see why they did use it probably in the summer, mainly. But when Mrs. Cannon and the children were asleep, they had that skirmish and going around and all around the house. They were in the back where it's very warm. The ceilings are so much lower. And so that's how, I guess in those days, they just moved around where it was going to be cooler. And then later on, they began to sleep on porches. But anyway, it's a very comfortable home because it's one story. This is where Mr. Cannon enjoyed so much in the summer to be out and entertain on this porch. The kitchen wasn't too far from here, so it was very easy for them to entertain, and they would shut the blinds at the certain times of the morning so the sun wouldn't come in later on in the summer. And it was just, he had a lot of safes and a lot of settees out here. I was reading about it. So they must have really enjoyed porches a lot when it was cool. We have bed and breakfast, so this is where they have their breakfast in the mornings. Now, this is the Spanish part of Glenfield, about 1812. You notice how low the ceilings are now. And in the summer, this is when it was very, very hot, this was used as a sleeping porch. Very comfortable out here. My mother added the window panes, so now we can put air conditioning in it. I'm going to take you through the bedroom so you can see how low the ceilings are and how comfortable they were in the winter. Now, this is the Spanish part, as I was telling you, with the low ceilings, and we use this for bed and breakfast. We have a lot of people that love to come, and they have their children, so that's why we have 2 beds in here. That one over there on the left is from Louisiana. This one, it was my grandmother's. It's Victorian. We have this other room I'm going to show you, too. This is this bed we got in New Orleans too, on the river roads. And notice the post. Of course, I probably have it where you don't see it as easy, but each post is a different piece of wood. On the plantations, they had beautiful woods, and whatever scraps they had left, they would make a bed out of it. So this bed has many pieces of different woods in it, but it's a typical 3/4 bed. And this is another comfortable room that we rent out for bed and breakfast. This bed was my great-grandmother's bed. It's a Victorian bed. It's a little later bed. The doors used to be windows, but we needed modern conveniences, so the laundry room and the bathroom is in that room. So anyway, we love renting it out to people, and majority of them with their children. I used to have ruffles under the beds, but the children got under it, and the mamas couldn't find them. They'd get so panicky, and there was a child wouldn't over their mouths. But anyway, we love having it, and all the rooms open up out on the porch. And as I was telling you, when it got really hot, they began to start sleeping on the porches. And then the patio, all the bricks came from under the hill, Silver Street. They're all handmade, and that was put in about 40 years ago. The kitchen was right over there in near the part of the house, because the other part was my mother added in 1950. But where the little window is, that was the end of the antebellum part, and they came out, and that was where the kitchen was, and the barn was down the road, probably past the hill, and then they had 2 servants' quarters. And they were probably damaged a lot when they had another tornado in Natchez in 1908. I miss the kitchen. I would love to have that kitchen there. We love to share the house with people. We have bed and breakfast, and we have ghost tours. And I hope all of you will be able to come sometimes and see Glenfield. It's open all year round. And we also have weddings, and we also have dinner parties. Thank you so much.
We hope you've enjoyed your tour of Glenfield today here in Natchez, Mississippi with your incredible hostess, Miss Marjorie, 4th generation owner of Glenfield. We want to remind you that Glenfield is an operating bed and breakfast opened year-round for tours and for hosting you and your family when you come to visit us here at Natchez. And right now, it's on the Natchez Pilgrimage Tour for the spring tour running through the end of May. So come see us in Natchez and come visit Glenfield.